So with dance, singing, clapping, and zapateado, flamenco adapts to and responds to the trees' rhythm. Flamenco works here as a mediating language between humans and trees, as if it was a common language between them. No? Passing more through emotion than through logic becomes very valuable to approach the subjectivities of trees and understand through them the ecology that concerns us. These are some images of the performative dialogue that we do with ecologists, flamenco dancers, and musicians, and where we talk about trees, climate change, flamenco as mediator, and art as knowledge generator. So, in conclusion, these are my main lessons that I've learned from the plantocene. First, art, science, and fiction have proven to be powerful combinations to change human subjectivities towards more ecocentric paradigm. It's fundamental to facing ecological crisis. The non-human perspective has made it possible to understand the environment from other points of view. Secondly, from the external perspective of the plantocene, the limitations, fictions, and blind spots of Western thought, such as anthropocentrism, binary thinking, exceptionalism, etc., that permeates botany, ecology, environmental management, our knowledge in general, and our actions, are revealed more clearly. We must therefore de-anthropomorphize thought and de-anthropomorphize all disciplines, because attending to the rest of beings through anthropomorphism and human morality leads us down the same path. So it is necessary to transform ourselves, to de-anthropomorphize ourselves, as when we became landscape, as in those words that we became landscape. No? And we must also debunk these structural fictions through counterfictions, fragmenting the foundational binary and skewed narrative with a multitude of alternative stories that lead to a rethinking of our way of thinking about ourselves in the world. Only by freeing ourselves from these limitations and opening ourselves to other fictions can we open the range of possibilities to other scenarios that are not the catastrophic futures to which currently leads us. And thirdly, it is important and urgent to recognize artistic research as a powerful generator of knowledge, and not just as a means for disseminating results. Because artistic research offers a new perspective on ecological conflicts. A certain amount of subjectivity, intuition, fiction, and emotion within the framework of rigorous research can offer an interesting approach that would otherwise be unreachable. And above all, one last lesson that has been very important to me. The perspective of the plantocene helps me pay attention to the other species that inhabit the places I frequent, my house, my workshop, the city, the forest. Being aware of the coexistence, because we already are coexisting, although we are not aware. No? So being aware of this coexistence, even with species considered useless for commercial purpose or conflictive, gives me degrees of knowledge and negotiation, and allows me to extend affective bonds beyond my own species. Against the consumerist and productivist logic that vaporizes love, ancestral bonds with other species stand. Thus, interspecies and ecocentric thinking are necessary political acts for our survival as society, but also, and this is very important, there are also political acts against the individuality and loneliness to which consumerism, capitalism, relegates us. Because quoting Jorge Richman, a crisis of attention is a crisis of love. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Paula. And now, I'd like to start just with a few questions and a little bit of a reflection about the two presentations and how to link them, and also maybe to link them to the previous two ones. And firstly, I'd like to highlight a few points that I took note. And the first one is that many times we were talking about perspectives, point of views, and I think in both presentations there is an invitation, a clear invitation that we need to change our points of view, but what does it mean, right? So this reminds me of the Cartesian change, right? You need to change how this Cartesianism, the heritage from Cartesianism that split us between nature and culture. A human being is not part of the nature. We are observers, and the observer, the object and observer is split, and then to include us in this flow. That is the world and the universe, right? And then also in these two concepts, the interspecies thought and material sustainability in both presentations, I see an alignment in trying to invite us to rethink how we can talk about sustainability today in relation to climate change and emergency. And also, this implies a directionality in the thinking. Michael speaks about the top-down, bottom-up axis, and I also would like to consider as a question, because when there was this Cartesian split, there was also an inner and outer split. We were placed outside nature as a sheer observer, and this is this axis is up down and bottom up are together mixed with this inner and outer axis. What do you think about that? And also, I'd like to include the perspective that was brought by Paula, and that includes in this change of point of view the microscopic scale, because we are, at some point, I think you talk about the communities of modes of existence in the vegetal hospitality, but we ourselves, our body, any body, not anybody, any body, any material body is a community of modes of existence. In ourselves, we have lots of thousands of bacteria, right? And also the vegetal world is there. And so the microcosm and the microcosm together can maybe help us to understand when you navigate these scales of reality from the super minimal to the micro, and then the macro and mezzo and whatever scales there exist. So my question for you both is, how do you connect that with the previous presentations, in which I also took notes, and I think it could be very interesting to connect, because at first they seem to be very different presentations, but in fact they are talking about very similar things. In the first presentations there was in Donatella and in Mario, they were talking about I lost here in my paper. They were talking about lobbying, how plants lobby too, how other beings lobby, how other beings struggle, where is the environmental struggle, how they also have environmental struggle, and they could maybe help us to with some lessons to merge this, to save this gap, and also the territorial struggles in plants, and the colonial aspects of, we talk about decolonization and colonization, and plants are also very colonial somehow, and well, how to connect this analysis and with this idea of collective visions, of idea of commons, and to really help us to go on the climate change challenge, right? So, a little bit. I'm sorry, we don't have much time. And then, after they talk, you can open to the floor, right? Or maybe not. Let's see if there is some questions from the floor together, and so they can answer the whole thing. Okay.
Hola, ¿se oye? Gracias. Bueno, me ha gustado muchísimo, me imagino que a todo el mundo, la visión desde, bueno, el intento de no visión antropocentrista y entender, por ejemplo, en el caso de Michael, que efectivamente las plantas son mucho más importantes para el devenir del planeta históricamente que nosotros mismos. También me ha gustado muchísimo el planteamiento y esa redefinición tan divertida desde antropoceno a plantoceno. Pero es que me gustaría, por una parte, plantear una visión crítica, en este caso, a las interpretaciones que se han hecho del mundo vegetal, porque si bien estamos hablando todo el rato de cambiar la perspectiva, de la perspectiva antropocéntrica a otras perspectivas, digamos, más diversas, o al menos a que no sea antropocéntrica, sino antrópica, pues lo que veo es que justamente en el caso de las obras de arte todo tenía que ver con reconstruir antrópicamente lo que ya es una realidad natural. Me explico, tanto las narraciones como en las creaciones formales, por ejemplo, una manta de hierba o creciendo las plantas sobre determinados organismos, en determinados lugares. Eso no deja de ser, en mi opinión, y lo lanzo aquí como punto para la discusión, de rehacer formalmente lo que ya está hecho, por lo tanto aplicar nuestra perspectiva antrópica y reconstruir incluso los discursos. Los llevamos a nuestro ámbito cultural sin sentir o, desde mi punto de vista, valorar el valor intrínseco que tienen en el ámbito natural. Y luego, por otra parte, ¿sabes? Yo es que estoy al revés que tú. O sea, yo hice biología, ecología, trabajé en ello, y ahora resulta que estoy en una facultad de Bellas Artes. Entonces siempre tengo que lanzar, romper una lanza, mejor dicho, por ciertos asuntos como, por ejemplo, la confusión de conocimiento. Se maneja muy alegremente la gestión desde un punto de vista colonialista, es aquí de las plantas invasoras, pero porque se maneja muy alegremente la diferencia entre planta foránea, es decir, que no ha crecido en ese lugar de forma evolutiva, y planta invasiva. Y además es muy fácil decir esta planta es buena o mala. Los biólogos sabemos que no hay plantas buenas ni malas, ni animales buenos y malas, sino mal situados. Los hemos traído y los hemos llevado nosotros. Y ahora nos permitimos cambiar los discursos y decir, no podemos permitirnos deshacernos de ellas, matarlas, etc. Claro, eso es muy fácil de decir con las plantas, pero pensemos en las avispas o en las moscas. Quiero decir, realmente a la hora de entrar en determinados discursos acerca de la naturaleza, pues tenemos que ser un poco más precisos. Un tomate es una planta foránea, nadie se le ocurre echarlo por ahí, pero el laurel es una planta invasora en Canarias, no en la península ibérica. Entonces, me parece que esos matices son importantísimos. Y bueno, quería dejarlos aquí porque me parece como que hay que considerar la perspectiva que tenemos, que no podemos evitar tener, que es nuestra perspectiva desde este mundo occidental, capitalista, etc. Sin más, gracias.
Another question?
I'll try to be really brief. I mean, so I'm not going to say how good it was. You know, it was very good. So congratulations for the paper. Yeah, my question goes a bit in the direction of the last one, but I would like to be a bit more precise in terms of what kind of vocabulary we are using. It's impossible to forget the words that are used and talk about subjectivity of plants and things like that. So my question to you all would be, as I said, a bit in the same direction, but I mean, the first thing that you should be doing to avoid this kind of whatever you want to call it, perspective, should not be maybe starting to rethink about the vocabulary that you use to talk about other beings. And like even the word no humans, you know, it's completely anthropocentric. It's just to, anyway. So that would be one. And for Michael, maybe not for now because we are running out of time. But I do not see Eduardo Vivero de Castro in your presentation. You talked about him. You named him maybe 3 times. But I don't see his perspective in there. So it seems to me like he was a name, you know, like this anthropologist from Brazil who does this nice thing. But yes, what's his point? Because I don't see the connection. But yeah, maybe it's a long question, but sorry.
Thank you. I'm Daniel, University of Copenhagen. Thank you for the presentation. My question is for Michael. I really enjoyed your presentation. I was surprised you didn't mention Emanuele Coccia. I see that you are different, especially in the notion of metaphysics. He's claiming for the metaphysics of mixture in his philosophy of plants, and you're on the materialist aspect, trying to getting over an idea of metaphysics, which I really enjoyed. But would you say maybe you share your plea in getting over what I guess in psychology is called plant blindness, so that we ignore plants because they're inanimate, they move to the background, we really don't notice them. Although both of you, Emanuele, and you would say that they are essential for creating the conditions for life of our planet.
It's okay. So please, you can answer. There are no more questions. One more.
Hola, bueno, gracias por vuestras presentaciones estupendas, las dos. Yo quería incidir en ese lenguaje humano-no humano que lleva toda la mañana saliendo y que creo que es como, deberíamos revisarlo. Y quería hacer un pequeño apunte también, es como planta no planta, o sea, es como cuando es, luego sí que habéis ampliado, ¿no? Pero los discursos han ido muy en la línea de planta no planta. También habéis dicho que quizá falta mucho por conocer, y es verdad, y se ha dicho en las 2 presentaciones anteriores. Y un pequeño apunte con la última parte sobre el flamenco de Paula, comentar que en otra investigación escuché una vez a gente que se dedicaba a grabar ultrasonidos emitidos por calderones en el Mediterráneo y también salía un patrón flamenco, ¿no? Salía un patrón por tangos en este caso, y cuando se estudiaban las poblaciones de calderones en el Índico, los patrones no tenían nada que ver con el flamenco, sonaban mucho más a como suenan los ritmos tradicionales de esas islas del Índico. Entonces, a lo mejor ahí hay otro punto de relación que nos estamos perdiendo, que todavía no hemos sido capaces de conocer, de algo que no es ni de los animales ni nuestro, de las plantas ni nuestro, sino que es común y que no hemos sabido identificar.
No more questions, right? So.
Okay, so there are a lot of questions about what you talk about this thing about the Michael Marder talk about the bottom down. Bottom up, no? And about also, you talk about the other speakers that were talking about love struggle, no? I think I deal that in Embolismo por Solea, no? In terms that we, in this kind of project, the kind of project I want to working now is knowing with, not knowing from up to bottom, but knowing accompanied with the ones that we are trying to know, and knowing each other, like they are knowing us and we are knowing them, and following in this knowledge together. That's why also like adapting to their rhythms is metaphorically also that, no? And about how they love and how they struggle too. So about, and creo que esto lo voy a responder en castellano, la pregunta sobre las plantas invasoras, estoy absolutamente de acuerdo contigo. Ahí desde el arte a veces se hace una extrapolación, ¿no?, al otro lado, y yo he oído incluso propuestas artísticas que defienden las especies invasoras en términos también como de algo así como si fueran inmigrantes o algo así, y esto para mí es una falta de rigor muy grande. En mi caso, lo que yo defiendo es una multitud de relatos, una multitud de aproximaciones y un conflicto muchísimo más complejo del que se plantea tanto por un lado, tanto desde la excesiva simplificación de la gestión ambiental, en la cual yo he estado trabajando 15 años en el Departamento de Medio Ambiente y por tanto nos regimos en esto, catálogo, estás dentro o estás fuera, eres a extinguir o no. Y como la excesiva también simplificación desde el otro lado, ¿no?, hacia un buenismo exagerado. Entonces, como la cosa es muchísimo más compleja, y eso es lo que representaba en Cruel de Tucumán, ¿no?, la complejidad de los relatos. Por otro lado, lo de el ámbito natural y el ámbito natural, y aquí esto tiene que ver también con la pregunta del vocabulario, también lo natural, y lo natural es una ficción, o sea, que es natural y que no, siendo en cuenta que nosotros lo somos, quiero decir, ahí entramos también en el problema de las palabras y entramos también en lo que tú comentabas, ¿no? Cómo utilizar otras palabras. Bueno, ahora mismo tenemos el problema de que nos entendemos con estas y por lo tanto es verdad que decimos excesivamente non-humans, we say like a lot of times non-humans, and we're still like in this using this concept, we are still the main character of the story, no? Like non-humans, like, but we don't have, we need other words for us to understand in a less anthropocentric way. We don't have them now. We use natural, non-natural, non-humans because we don't have those words. We have to invent it. I sometimes try, like the plantocene is a invented term in order to kind of de-anthropomorphize so much the vocabulary, but we still need a lot of more words too. And, también en relación a lo de planta no planta, yo estoy de acuerdo, aunque se llama el plantoceno, although the project is named the plantocene, you can see that I'm not just working with plants, no, not even just working in a macro scale, no, but it's like from the plant's perspective. I started from the plant's perspective, but of course they are all in this chain of multiple interaction with other species, including us. So from there, from the trying to understand the other, and the other could be a microscope or a big scale, no? And of course, it is very subjective and very anthropic, as you said, not anthropocentric, but anthropic. Of course, it's me listening to the tree, it's me dealing with the plants, and it's my fiction. But in this fiction, I try to be the other one, as I would try to understand you. I cannot be you, but I will try to fiction how is being you. And that being you might tell a lot about me also. But it's always this fiction because it's impossible. I didn't explain another project that it was called Pareidolia, where I was studying some roots. And I discovered that the pieces of roots that I was studying, for me, they had shape of a person. There was a torso, there was a bird also, and there was like a strong man, and then there was a big piece of 3 meters, and it was perfectly a person shape. But I could see persons in that shapes because I am human. A plant wouldn't see a person in that piece of fruit, no? And that I understood that as a lesson that in my fiction, of course, I'm always living in this fiction. It's not that I really thought that I was landscape or if I really think that the trees play flamenco, but I need this fiction in order to enter this otherness, no? So in my fiction, the plants were telling me, okay, you can open your thought to other non-human thoughts or non-human realities, but this is what you are, no? And that is called pareidolia. This is this effect why we see two dots and a line and we think it's a face, no? So, and that happens to us. Who knows what is pareidolia for a plant, no? Perhaps they see us as flowers, who knows. So what I'm propose is leaving these fictions, opening to fiction, because staying only in logical thoughts don't let us trespassing this border of thinking as or with the others.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Maybe you have to. Thank you very much. And then please go ahead.
Yes, well, thank you for the questions. There's a lot to address here, but let me just try to get to the really crucial points. I think that the task of de-anthropomorphization is not merely the task of leaving behind fictional, fixed human identity, because that would mean that we would keep repeating the same thing over and over again unconsciously. The idea is that the other than human, the vegetal, the animal, maybe even the bacterial, is within us not only at the level of the body, not only corporeally, but even within this otherwise seemingly monolithic idea or figure of being human. And the question is, how can we allow that which has been repressed and suppressed to create this apparently monolithic figure of the human to all of a sudden emerge and to flourish after millennia, at least in the West, of repression of that vegetal, animal, and all kinds of other heritages within ourselves at the level of, at the physical, physiological, but also psychological and thinking levels. So a lot of my work has been really dedicated to this lifting of the repression, I would say in psychoanalytic terms, that has occluded from view and has not allowed the expression of the plant within us that has always been there. Of course, if I put it in these terms, it's not a one-time task that can be accomplished once and for all, but it's something that has to be reinitiated and restarted over and over again, because as we know, there are all kinds of resistances and counter-resistances, and it is very painful actually to do this. There is the negation by everyone who is vested in the status quo, from conventional scientists to defenders of human exceptionalism. So these are not only political struggles, but they are also psychological resistances, and they need to be treated as such, even when we do work in philosophy, in art, in new paradigms of plant science, for instance, that acknowledge plant intelligence. So this is a little bit as a response to that. In terms of the inversion of values, the highest become the lowest and the lowest highest, of course for Nietzsche this was only the first step in what he called the revaluation of all values. Because if you simply invert, and this is I think what is happening now in all domains, not only obviously in philosophy, but in anthropology, in many different domains, there is a mere inversion, and that's a necessary but only a first step toward the revaluation of values, where new values would be able to emerge from within these material perspectives that have been repressed, suppressed, not allowed to show up in the open. And those, of course, other perspectives can refer to the perspectives of plants, animals, but also the entire, and this would be a generalization, of course, but the entire realm of human beings outside the Western fold. Right, so the question then is why even bother with Western metaphysics? I presented this approach as a kind of immanent criticism, and to me this is quite important, because once again we cannot simply pretend that this is a set obviously of very dangerous ideas, of very harmful ones, that once we leave them behind us and once we forget them, everything will be nice and good.